Hello, it's Roger Bisbee here from the Skill Builder channel, and today I'm out with Ian and possibly James if he turns up. He's on another job to build some deck steps. So we're going to show you how to set that out and basically a very simple way of constructing it. Now this deck is quite high, as you can see, and normally you need planning permission to do something like this. In actual fact, this has just been cut down from the ground. The ground was taken away when the extension was built, and it's actually just been put back to what was more or less its existing height. So in that case it's perfectly permissible, but if you wanted to build a high deck, especially if it overlooks your neighbours, you do need planning permission. Be warned. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is work out what our tread is going to be, what the rise is going to be, and what the width of the tread is going to be. Now it's a very simple thing, this. We know that we want to get from the top down to the ground, so we just measure that distance. That will be the total height from the top of the deck to the ground level. And then we know that that is, say in this case, 147. So we then say, well, okay, we don't want any tread to be more than 200 millimeters, the rise to be any more than 200 millimeters. So we take the 200 millimeters, we divide that into the 147 and see how many treads we got. Now, it doesn't work out exactly, so we adjust the height of each tread to suit. So we may end up in between two and we may have to make a decision, but I wouldn't go any higher than 200 because it does get very awkward. If you can, make it slightly lower, make the steps slightly longer. So once we've worked out that, we know how many steps we need. We then just have to multiply that by the width of the steps, which in this case, we're going to make life easy for ourselves because we're going to have a double width of decking for each step. We're not going to worry about having to rip those down or anything. So we'll just be able to multiply that out and find out where we end up. We know roughly where we're going to end up, and it's going to be out there somewhere. That is one of those things you just have to try and calculate. But very, very important that you make sure that all your treads, all your steps are an equal height. Do not have an unequal one because you will fall, you will trip, people will sprain their ankle. There's something about the brain that once you've stepped down once, you step down again, you expect it to be the same, and then you step down again and your brain just automatically works to that anticipation, that expectation if you like. And if one of those treads is not the same, if one riser is slightly different, that's where you stumble and fall. Many people have done it. They've actually done studies where they've put a video camera on some stairs with one even tread and seen just how many people fall down on that particular place. People have died like that. So we've measured up and we fell between either 6 or 7 treads. In other words, the 6 treads was just slightly over the 200, the 7 treads was below it. So we had a word with the client. You've got to have a word with the client if you can, saves you having to do it twice. And the client said, you know what, I'd rather have it slightly lower each step and go out a little bit more into the garden. So that's what we're doing. We're going to go for 7 treads and we're going to multiply that out now, and I'll show you how we do that. Yeah, so now we've decided what we're going to have in the way of our going and what we're going to have in the way of our rise, and Ian's taped up our trusty roofing square or stairs square here, and that means we don't have to keep measuring it. We know exactly what that measurement is there, so we lay that down. Now let me just show you how we do that. Okay, so we mark that out now. So on that side we've got our rise, and on this side we've got our going, which is the width of our treads. So once we've marked that out, that gives us automatically the width and the angle of our staircase. Now whether you're housing in with a router or whether you're using a batten system of support or whether you're doing what we're doing, which is an open tread, the principle is exactly the same. Just with a simple square, which costs you less than a fiver, you can mark out your stairs, you can work out roofs and everything. So this is the deck all finished and the handrails up, and you may be wondering why we've got this funny little bit under here, and the reason is that the handrails as standard don't come tall enough, so we had to extend them because these have got to get passed off by the building inspector under the building regulations, so the handrail has to be a certain height for the building inspector. Unfortunately, you can't get that the standard thing, so I think most people who fit handrails to decks don't actually bother about getting through the building regs. But as you can see, this one is quite high, so it needs to have all the standards that you would normally apply to an indoor balustrade. The other very important thing, this is a toddler crawling around here now, and you have to make sure that you can't pass 100mm sphere through the gaps in these spindles. In other words, the maximum distance at any point in these spindles has to be no more than 100mm. That's a fairly small baby's head, but you've got to, you've got to allow for the smallest. The child that's now crawling around on this deck is perfectly safe. We've even got a lovely gate that goes across here, and that can be locked. There's a nice locking mechanism on that, so it's all safe and secure, which is the important thing. So I hope you found that interesting and useful. When you're fixing balustrades and handrails, you really do have to make sure that you do a proper job on them and not just treat them as a lesser bit of engineering, because, as I say, they do have exactly the same characteristics as any balustrade fixed to any indoor part of the building. I'm Roger Bisbee. I hope you found that useful and interesting, and come back and see us soon on Skill Builder. We'll have more projects going on, hopefully.